It was a decision that would change two lives in a single heartbeat. A man driving through a freezing storm sees a stranded car and stops to do the right thing. But when he shines his flashlight on the shivering, pregnant stranger, the world stops. A black single dad helped a pregnant woman, only to discover she's his first love from years ago. He thought he was just changing a tire. He didn't know he was about to unearth a 12-year-old secret and face the ghost of the girl who broke his heart. What do you do when the person who left you behind returns with nothing but the clothes on her back and a baby on the way? If you believe the true character is revealed when no one is watching, this story is for you. We often think the past stays buried, but sometimes it waits for us on a dark roadside in Ohio. Stay with me to see how a single act of kindness can heal a decade of pain. The rain in Cincinnati that evening wasn't just falling, it felt like it was trying to erase the city. It was a cold, miserable downpour that turned the November sky into a bruised shade of purple and heavy charcoal. The wind howled through the trees lining the service road, stripping the last of the autumn leaves from their branches and plastering them against the wet asphalt. Audrey tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his old Ford pickup truck. His knuckles, usually the color of warm mahogany, were pale with tension as he navigated the slick curves. The heater was blasting on full power, fighting a losing battle against the biting chill seeping through the glass windows. The cab of the truck smelled of drywall dust, old coffee, and the faint, sweet scent of strawberry shampoo, a scent that belonged to the little girl sleeping in the passenger seat. Audrey glanced over at his 6-year-old daughter, Kira. She was fast asleep, her head lolling against the seatbelt strap, her mouth slightly open. She was clutching a worn-out stuffed bear that had lost one of its button eyes years ago. Looking at her, Audrey felt that familiar ache in the center of his chest, the one that had taken up permanent residence there 3 years ago. It was the space where his wife Simone used to be. It wasn't a sharp pain anymore, not like it was in the beginning. Now it was just a dull, heavy silence. Since Simone passed away from a sudden heart defect, it had been just Audrey and Kira against the world. He worked long, brutal shifts as a contractor, renovating old Victorian homes on the east side of the city, trying to build a life that felt sturdy again. He was tired. His bones ached from hauling lumber all day. His boots were heavy with mud, and all he wanted was a hot shower and to heat up the leftover beef stew for dinner. He adjusted the rearview mirror, his eyes heavy. He just wanted to get home. But as he turned onto the quiet service road to avoid the gridlock on the highway, his headlights swept across a figure on the side of the road. A small silver sedan was pulled over on the narrow shoulder. Its hazard lights were blinking weakly in the gloom, orange pulses cutting through the driving rain. The car looked abandoned at first, listing dangerously to the right. The back tire was completely shredded, the rubber flayed and twisted against the wet asphalt. Audrey slowed down. His father had raised him with a simple, unbreakable code. You don't leave people stranded in the dark. Not in this neighborhood, and definitely not in this weather. But Audrey hesitated. It was late. He had his daughter in the car. The world wasn't as safe as it used to be, and caution was a survival instinct he had honed over the years. He squinted through the windshield, the wipers slapping rhythmically back and forth. That was when he saw the movement. Standing next to the trunk was a person, a woman. She was struggling with a tire iron, slipping in the mud as she tried to gain leverage. She wore a beige trench coat that looked far too thin for the freezing temperatures, soaked through to the skin so that it clung to her frame. Audrey sighed, a sound that rumbled deep in his chest. He couldn't drive past. He just couldn't. "Hold on, sweetie," he whispered to the sleeping Kira, though she didn't stir. He pulled his truck up behind the silver sedan, positioning it so his headlights would offer some illumination. He engaged his own hazard lights, the amber strobe joining the rhythm of the storm. He grabbed his heavy canvas work jacket from the back seat, zipped it up to his chin, and grabbed a heavy-duty flashlight. Opening the door, the cold hit him like a physical blow. The wind carried the smell of wet earth and freezing rain. Andre stepped out, his work boots splashing into a puddle. "Ma'am?" he called out. His voice was deep and steady, fighting the sound of the wind. "You need a hand?" The woman by the car froze. She was hunched over the wheel well, her back to him. When she didn't turn around immediately, Andre paused. He raised his hands slightly, palms open, even though he was holding the flashlight. He knew how he looked, a large, broad-shouldered black man appearing out of the darkness on a deserted road. He knew the fear that could spark, and he always tried to soften his approach. "I have a jack in my truck," he shouted over the rain, taking a slow step forward. "Why don't you get back in your car where it's dry? I can take care of this." The woman slowly straightened up. She seemed to shrink into herself, her shoulders hunched up to her ears. She turned around, shielding her eyes from the glare of his headlights. I can't get the lug nuts loose," she stammered. Her voice was faint, trembling violently. It was a soft, melodic voice, one that triggered a strange, dusty memory in the very back of Andre's mind, like a song he hadn't heard in a decade. Andre stepped closer, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness to illuminate her. The rain was plastering her blonde hair to her skull. Mascara was running in dark streaks down her pale cheeks. She looked exhausted, her posture screaming of a fatigue that went deeper than just physical tiredness. But as the light fully hit her face, Andre stopped dead in his tracks. The rain hammered against his jacket, but he didn't feel it. The cold wind bit at his ears, but he didn't feel that either. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The sound of the storm faded into a dull hum, replaced by the thundering of his own heart. He knew those eyes. He knew the shape of that jawline, even though it was thinner now, gaunt with stress. He knew the way she held her chin when she was trying to be brave. "Andre?" he breathed. The name slipped out of his mouth before he could stop it. The woman squinted, wiping rain from her lashes with a shaking hand. She peered at the tall man standing before her. She looked at his face, the strong brow, the kind eyes, the small scar on his chin from a construction accident years ago. Recognition dawned on her face slowly, followed immediately by a look of utter devastation. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Andre?" she whispered. It was Audrey, the girl he had loved with a burning, all-consuming intensity from the age of 16 until 22. They had been everything to each other once. High school sweethearts who defied the odds. He was the captain of the football team, the scholarship kid working 2 jobs. She was the quiet artist from the wealthy side of town, the girl whose parents turned up their noses at boys like him. They had planned to conquer the world together, but life had pulled them apart with brutal efficiency. He had stayed in Cincinnati to care for his sick mother and work in the trades. She had been sent off to a prestigious art school in New York. The distance, the different worlds, the slow fading of phone calls. It hadn't been an angry breakup, just a quiet, painful drifting away that left a scar on his heart that had taken years to fade. He hadn't seen her in 12 years, not since the day she packed her car and drove east. "Look at you," Andre said, his voice cracking. He didn't know what else to say. His brain was misfiring, trying to reconcile the memory of the vibrant, laughing girl in the summer sun with this shivering, broken woman in the November rain. I didn't want you to see me like this," she choked out. That was when Andre's flashlight beam dipped lower. She wasn't just stranded. Underneath the soaked beige trench coat, her belly was round and heavy. She was pregnant, heavily pregnant. The fabric of her dress was pulled tight against the curve of her stomach. Andre felt the breath leave his lungs. "Andre? I know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She wrapped her arms around her belly as if to shield the child from the cold, or perhaps from his judgment. "You're freezing," Andre said, snapping out of his shock. The nostalgia could wait. The questions could wait. Her lips were turning blue. "Get in the truck, Andre, right now." I can't leave my car. I have everything in there, she said, panic rising in her voice. Please, Audrey, I just need to fix the tire. We aren't leaving it. I'll change the tire, Audrey said firmly, stepping toward her. He used the tone he used on job sites, the one that brokered no argument. But you are not standing out here in this freezing rain in your condition. My daughter is in the truck. The heater is on. Go now. She hesitated, looking at him with wide, fearful eyes. Then the cold seemed to win. She nodded, her body shaking violently. Audrey guided her to the passenger side of his truck. He opened the door, and a blast of warm air escaped. Kira woke up groggily as the door opened, blinking her big brown eyes at the intrusion. "Daddy?" Kira asked, her voice thick with sleep. "It's okay, baby," Audrey said soothingly, leaning in. "An old friend needs to get warm. Make some room for her, okay?" Audrey climbed in, her movements heavy and pained. She tried to sit on the edge of the seat, careful not to drip water on the upholstery, but she was soaked through. She looked at the little girl, and then back at Audrey, a look of profound sorrow crossing her face. "Thank you," she whispered. Audrey shut the door, sealing them in the warmth. He stood outside for a moment, letting the rain wash over his face. He needed a second to breathe. Audrey, here, pregnant, alone? Why did she look so broken? The Audrey he knew was destined for galleries in Manhattan, for a life of ease and beauty. She wasn't supposed to be changing a tire on a muddy shoulder in Ohio with desperation in her eyes. He shook his head, grabbed the tire iron from the ground, and went to work. He attacked the lug nuts with a ferocity fueled by confusion and adrenaline. He spun the wrench, his muscles burning, but his mind was racing miles away. Where is her husband? The question burned in his mind. A woman this far along in her pregnancy shouldn't be traveling alone at night. She shouldn't be driving a beat-up sedan with bald tires. She shouldn't look like she hadn't eaten a good meal in weeks. He finished the job in 10 minutes, his hands numb from the cold. He threw the ruined tire into the trunk of her car, noticing it was packed to the brim with boxes and clothes, and tossed his tools into the bed of his truck. He climbed back into the driver's seat of the pickup. The sudden silence of the cab was deafening after the roar of the wind. Audrey was holding her hands over the heater vents, shivering so hard her teeth were chattering. Kira was staring at her with unabashed curiosity, clutching her teddy bear. "Here," Audrey said, reaching into the back and grabbing a clean shop towel he kept for emergencies. "Dry your face." Audrey took it with trembling fingers. "Thank you." "Audrey," Audrey said softly, turning in his seat to face her. The water dripped from his own nose, but he ignored it. "What is going on? Is there someone I should call? A husband? A boyfriend?" She pressed the towel to her eyes and took a deep, ragged breath. A tear tracked through the grime on her cheek. "There's no one, Audrey," she said. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the weight of 12 years of unsaid words. Audrey waited. He needed to understand how the brightest star he ever knew had fallen this far. "I married a man 5 years ago," she began, her voice hollow, staring out the windshield at the rain-slicked road. "He was charming, successful. We lived in Chicago. My parents loved him. I thought we were building a life." She paused, rubbing her stomach unconsciously. "He was into things, risky investments, gambling. I didn't know how bad it was. I was blind. I was so happy being a wife, painting in my studio. I didn't look at the accounts." She took a shaky breath, and the dam broke. 6 months ago, the FBI knocked on our door. He wasn't just gambling, Audrey. It was a Ponzi scheme. And when the heat got too high, he vanished. He just left. But he didn't just leave me. He left me with everything. The debts, the loans he took out in my name. The bank took the house. They took the accounts. I sold my jewelry, my car, my furniture. I bought this clunker just to try to get back to Ohio." Audrey felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp, rising in his chest.
And the baby? Does he know? He doesn't care, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and grief. I've been staying in motels, moving south, trying to get to a women's shelter in Kentucky that I heard helps people like me. But I ran out of gas money 2 days ago. I've been sleeping in the back seat.
Andre looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the hollows under her cheekbones. He saw the way her hands shook, not just from cold, but from weakness. She was starving. She was carrying a child, and she was starving. A wave of pity washed over him, so strong it almost knocked the wind out of him. This was the woman he used to sit with on the hood of his first car, dreaming about the future. He used to hold her hand and promise he'd always keep her safe. Life had made a liar out of him. "You're not sleeping in a car tonight," Andre said. His voice was low, but it filled the small space of the truck. "Andre, I can't," she protested weakly, looking at him with wide, watery eyes. "I can't impose. You have your life, your daughter. I'm a mess. I can't bring this disaster into your home." "My wife passed away 3 years ago," Andre said. The words hung in the air. Audrey froze. Her hand went to her mouth again. "Oh, Andre, no." "It was a heart defect," he said simply. The words still tasted like ash, but he said them clearly. "It's just us. Just me and Kira. We have a guest room. It's warm. There's food." Audrey looked at him, shock registering on her face. She looked at the ring he still wore on a chain around his neck. She saw the lines of grief around his eyes that hadn't been there when they were 22. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I had no idea." "Don't be sorry," Andre said. He put the truck in gear. "Just let me help." She looked at Kira, who offered a shy, sleepy smile. "My daddy makes good spaghetti," the little girl said, breaking the tension with the innocent honesty only a child possesses. "And he reads good stories." Audrey crumbled. The resistance drained out of her, replaced by sheer exhaustion. The fight she had been holding on to for 6 months finally gave way. "Okay," she whispered, tears spilling over again. "Okay." The drive to Andre's house was quiet, save for the rhythmic thumping of the windshield wipers and the low hum of the heater. The silence wasn't empty, though. It was filled with the heavy, unspoken weight of 12 years. Andre kept his eyes on the road, his hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. Every now and then he would glance in the rearview mirror to check on the headlights of Audrey's car following him. He had driven it for her, letting her sit in the warmth of the truck with Kira while he navigated the limping sedan with the spare tire back to his place. But once they hit the main roads, they had switched back. He watched her headlights bobbing in the darkness behind him. It felt surreal. A ghost from his past was following him home. He thought about the last time he saw her. It was a sunny Tuesday in August. She was packing her convertible, excited about New York, about art school, about a life that didn't include dusty construction sites or a boyfriend who smelled like sawdust. He hadn't asked her to stay. He knew he couldn't clip her wings, but Lord knows it had hurt. It had hurt like a physical wound that refused to close. And now, here she was, broken, pregnant, alone. He turned into his driveway. His house was a sturdy, 2-story Victorian craftsman in the East End. It wasn't a mansion, but it was solid. He had restored it himself, stripping the lead paint, refinishing the original oak floors, and sealing the drafty windows. It was a labor of love, a nest he had built for Simone and Kira. He parked the truck and hurried back to help Audrey out of her car. The rain had settled into a steady, freezing drizzle. "Come on," he said, offering his arm. "Watch the steps, they get slick." Audrey took his arm. Her grip was weak, her fingers like ice. As they walked up the porch steps, she looked at the house. The porch light cast a warm yellow glow on the hanging fern, now brown and dormant for winter, and the 2 rocking chairs sitting side by side. "It's beautiful, Andre," she whispered, her teeth chattering. "You always said you wanted a house with a big porch." "Yeah," Andre said, unlocking the heavy oak door. "I did." He pushed the door open, and the warmth of the house rushed out to meet them. It smelled of cedar, old books, and the vanilla plug-in air fresheners Simone used to love. Andre had never stopped buying them. He ushered Audrey and a sleepy Kira inside. "Okay," Andre said, locking the world out behind them. "Shoes off, the floors are cold, but the rugs are warm." Audrey stood in the foyer, dripping water onto the welcome mat. She looked around the living room. It was cozy. A plush beige sofa, a fireplace with family photos on the mantel, shelves overflowing with books and toys. It was lived in. It felt like a home in a way her sterile designer apartment in Chicago never had. "I'm dripping on your floor," she said, looking down at her muddy boots with misery. "The floor's dry," Andre said, bending down to help Kira with her sneakers. "People are harder to fix. Don't worry about the floor." He stood up and looked at her. She was shivering so hard her whole body vibrated. "The guest room is downstairs, just off the kitchen. You don't have to climb the stairs. The bathroom is right next to it. You need a hot shower before you catch pneumonia." I don't have a change of clothes," Audrey admitted, clutching her coat tighter. "My bags are in the trunk, but everything is damp." Andre paused. A shadow passed over his face. He looked toward the stairs, toward the master bedroom he hadn't shared with anyone for 3 years. "I'll get you something," he said quietly. He walked up the stairs, his boots heavy on the wood. He entered his bedroom. It was neat, preserved. The bed was made. On the dresser, a framed photo of Simone laughing at a beach picnic sat next to her jewelry box. Andre walked to the tall chest of drawers. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the handle of the second drawer. He hadn't opened this drawer in months. It was Simone's loungewear. He took a deep breath and pulled it open. The scent of lavender sachets drifted up, hitting him with a wave of memory so strong it almost buckled his knees. He saw her favorite gray sweatpants, the ones with the drawstring she wore on Sunday mornings. He saw the oversized t-shirt she stole from him. He touched the fabric. It felt soft. She would want this, he told himself. Simone was the kindest soul I ever knew. She wouldn't want a pregnant woman freezing in the kitchen. He grabbed the sweatpants, the t-shirt, and a pair of thick wool socks. He closed the drawer gently. "Thank you, baby," he whispered to the empty room. He went back downstairs. Audrey was standing exactly where he'd left her, hugging herself. Kira had wandered into the kitchen to find a snack. "Here," Andre said, holding out the clothes. These were Simone's. They're clean. They should be comfortable." Audrey's eyes widened. She reached out and took the clothes with reverence. She ran her thumb over the soft fabric. She understood the weight of this gesture. Andre wasn't just giving her clothes. He was sharing the most private part of his grief with her. "Andre," she said, her voice thick with tears, "I can't. Are you sure?" She would have been the first one to offer them, Andre said, his voice steady but low. "Go. Shower. I'll start dinner." Andre turned to the kitchen with a heavy sigh. Andre just did something incredibly difficult, handling his late wife's belongings to help the woman who broke his heart years ago. That takes a strength most of us can only dream of. If you're rooting for Andre right now, hit that like button. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to put your own pain aside to help someone else? The kitchen was warm and smelled of rosemary and garlic. Andre stood at the stove stirring a pot of beef stew he had reheated. He moved mechanically, chopping fresh parsley to garnish the bowls, slicing a loaf of crusty bread. Cooking was his therapy. It was something he could control. He couldn't control the weather, he couldn't control death, and he certainly couldn't control the past showing up on a service road. But he could control the seasoning in a stew. Kira was sitting at the round oak table, coloring in a book. "Is the lady staying forever?" Kira asked, not looking up from her purple crayon. Andre paused, the knife hovering over the bread. "No, Ki, just until she's safe. She's having a tough time. She looks sad, like you looked when Mommy went to heaven." Andre felt a lump form in his throat. Kids saw everything. "Yeah, baby, she is sad. That's why we have to be extra nice." The door to the guest room opened. Audrey emerged. She looked like a different person. The mud was gone.
Her hair was damp and combed back. She was wearing Simone's gray sweatpants and the oversized shirt. They hung loosely on her frame everywhere except for the swell of her belly. She looked small, vulnerable, and clean.
She walked into the kitchen, her steps tentative. She looked at Audrey, then at the table. "It smells amazing," she said softly. "Sit," Audrey commanded gently. "You need to eat for two." He placed a steaming bowl of stew in front of her, along with a thick slice of buttered bread. Audrey sat. She picked up her spoon, her hand shaking slightly. She took the first bite. The reaction was immediate. She closed her eyes and let out a small, involuntary sound of pleasure. She took another bite, then another. She ate with a hunger that was heartbreaking to watch. She tried to be polite, tried to maintain the manners of the country club girl she was raised to be, but her body betrayed her. She was starving. Audrey sat across from her with his own bowl, but he didn't eat. He just watched. He poured her a glass of milk and pushed it toward her. "Slow down," he said gently. "There's plenty more." Audrey nodded, swallowing a piece of bread. She wiped her mouth with a napkin, looking ashamed of her ravenous hunger. "I haven't had a hot meal in 3 days," she admitted, her voice quiet. "I've been living on vending machine crackers and water." Audrey leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking. "Talk to me, Audrey. The real story. You said he left, but people don't just vanish without a trace." Audrey wrapped her hands around the warm mug of tea he had placed next to her. She stared into the dark liquid as if it held the answers. "He didn't just leave, Audrey. He erased us." She looked up, her blue eyes haunted. "We were living in a penthouse in the Loop. We had the cars, the galas, the vacations in St. Bart's. I thought I had everything I wanted. I thought I had made it. That's what my parents always wanted for me, right? Security, status." She let out a bitter, dry laugh. "It was all smoke and mirrors. He was using investors' money to pay off gambling debts. He was borrowing against our assets. When the market dipped, the scheme collapsed. He forged my signature on documents, Audrey. He made me liable for millions." Audrey's jaw tightened. "Coward." "Worse than a coward," she said. "He emptied our joint emergency account, the one I saved for the baby, and took a flight to a non-extradition country. I came home from the grocery store to find the FBI raiding the apartment. They seized everything. I was cleared of the fraud eventually, but the civil suits took the rest. I was left with nothing. No home, no money, no friends, because when you lose the money, you realize those people weren't really friends." She looked at her stomach. "And then I found out I was having a boy, and I realized I have nowhere to bring him. I have no crib, no diapers, no roof." Tears began to spill down her cheeks again, dropping onto Simone's gray shirt. "I felt like I deserved it," she whispered. "I left you, Audrey. I left the best man I ever knew because I was a scared little girl who wanted to please her parents. I chased the shiny life, and look where it got me, begging for help from the man whose heart I broke." The room went silent. The only sound was the refrigerator humming and Kira's crayon scratching on paper. Audrey looked at her. He saw the regret. He saw the shame burning her up from the inside. He reached across the table. His hand, large and rough from years of manual labor, the hands she once thought were too working class for her world, covered hers. Her hand was small and pale beneath his. "Stop it," Audrey said firmly. Audrey looked up, startled. "We aren't keeping score, Audrey," Audrey said. His voice was deep and resonant. "You didn't leave because you were evil. You left because you were 22 and you had a different path. I lived my life. I loved a woman with every fiber of my being. I have a daughter who was the light of my world. I don't regret my life. You shouldn't regret yours. You made mistakes? Fine. We all do. But you are not going to punish that little boy in your belly because of your pride. He squeezed her hand. You're here now. You're safe. That's the only thing that matters. Audrey looked at him, and for the first time, the tension in her shoulders truly dropped. She sobbed, but this time it wasn't out of fear. It was relief. It was the sound of a burden being shared. Thank you, she choked out. I don't know how I can ever repay you. Get healthy, Audrey said, pulling his hand back. Raise that boy to be a good man. That's how you repay me. An hour later, the house was quiet. Kira was tucked in, dreaming of purple unicorns. Audrey was asleep in the guest room, exhausted by the food and the warmth. Audrey stepped out onto the front porch. The rain had finally stopped. The clouds were breaking, revealing a sliver of a moon. The air was crisp and cold, smelling of wet asphalt and dead leaves. Audrey sat in his rocking chair. He wrapped his hands around a mug of coffee. He felt tired, but his mind was clear. He picked up his cell phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found Valerie, sister. He hit dial. Audrey? Val's voice was groggy. It's 11 o'clock. Is everything okay? Is it Kira? Kira's fine, Val. I'm sorry to wake you, but I need a favor. A big one. What is it? Val asked, instantly alert. Val was a nurse manager at the university hospital. She was the one person Audrey trusted implicitly. A friend? Who is she, Audrey?
Audrey took a breath. It's Audrey. There was a long silence on the other line. Val remembered Audrey. She remembered the nights Audrey spent staring at the ceiling after she left. She remembered the way Audrey's parents used to look at their family at graduation. Audrey? The artist Audrey? Val asked, her voice skeptical. Yes, she needs help, Val. She's alone. The baby is innocent. Audrey, Val sighed. You have a heart the size of a mountain. You know that. It's going to get you in trouble one day. Maybe, Audrey smiled into the darkness, but not today. Can you get her into the clinic tomorrow, pro bono, or on a payment plan I can cover? You're going to pay for her? Val asked, incredulous. She has nothing, Val. Just do this for me. Val sighed again, the sound of resignation. Bring her in at 8 a.m. I'll pull the strings. I'll get Dr. Evans to see her. Thanks, Val. I owe you. You owe me a lot more than thanks. Bring donuts. Audrey hung up. He sat back in the chair and rocked slowly. The wood creaked, a familiar, comforting sound. He thought about the strange circle of life, how love changes shape. He didn't love Audrey like he did when he was 18. That fire had burned out long ago. And he certainly didn't love her like he loved Simone. That was a mature, deep, soul-binding love. But he loved her as a human being. He loved her as a part of his history. And right now, he felt a fierce protectiveness over her and that unborn child. He wasn't just a contractor fixing houses anymore. He was fixing a life. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sun was bright and cold. When Audrey walked into the kitchen, Audrey looked up. The shadows under her eyes were still there, but the fear was gone. She smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile. Ready to go see the doctor? Audrey asked. Ready, she said. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes the people we love leave. Sometimes the dreams we chase turn into nightmares. But this story reminds us of one fundamental truth. True love isn't just about romance. It's about showing up. Audrey didn't save Audrey because he wanted her back. He saved her because he is a good man. And in a world that can be so cold and indifferent, being a good man is the most powerful thing you can be. They say you can't go home again, but maybe, just maybe, you can find a new home in the heart of an old friend. If this story touched your heart, please don't leave without subscribing. We are building a community here at True Black Tales, and I want you to be a part of it. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that good people still exist. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Audrey's shoes? I read every single one. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.